I have 10:45. Do you have 10:45? This is a lot more people than I thought would come. Great. Thank you. And you're all from Drexel. I'm going to talk about synchronous learning and synchronous course elements in online courses today. I want to start out though, well, I'll start off by introducing myself. I'm Mike Scheuermann from Drexel. I head up the instructional technology support area as an AVP working directly for the CIO of the entire university. I have about 40-some folks working for me in the client support area, online learning, as well as innovation. And I'm really passionate about synchronous tools in online courses. But as it turns out, my boss, who didn't have anything better to do when he woke up this morning, sent me a link to an article from the Chronicle. I don't know what the date is of the Chronicle article, but it's got to be fairly recent. The title of it is Online Programs, Profits Are There, Technological Innovation is Not. I really take exception to that. And I just got this morning about 6 o'clock. I want to read you the closing paragraph. And the writer goes through various things talking about adoption of technology and using learning management systems and doing mostly stuff in text, right, as opposed to multimedia files or videos or audio or any kind of Web 2.0 stuff or anything. This is the closing, part of the closing paragraph. For some reason it cut off the rest of it, but you'll get the idea. And this is a quote. It says, any innovation is really on the periphery in terms of the odd synchronous session or the odd video clip or the odd simulation, the writer says, of online programs. That's exactly the opposite of what my message is today. I mean, how many people know a faculty or yourselves are faculty where you have video clips? I mean, it's like part of the deal, right? I don't know where this article is coming from, but it's in the Chronicle. I did not notice it in the latest Chronicle that I got, but you might want to look at it. So, that was my starting message. I was kind of upset about that. So again, I work at Drexel, and you see the masthead from the conference and the NUWG group. And basically, the message is, in a nutshell, don't shy away from trying synchronous. Most LMSs have built-in synchronous elements. This happens to be focused somewhat on WIMBA. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be Adobe Connect, it could be the chat tool inside an LMS. It doesn't even matter what LMS it is. And some of the writing that I'm going to show you from some of the articles I found in recent journals will obviously not mention LMSs specifically, much as the fact that some of the synchronous tools are of value. And the real sharing I have for you today is not only takeaways on how you can do this effectively or have faculty who you support use it effectively and do it in a reasoned manner, is to share with you insights from students from online synchronous elements and what they thought about the learning experience, and also a few insights from a couple faculty at Drexel. So the basic message here in the abstract that I sent to Salle when I said I'd like to talk says that the marketing folks like to say anytime, any place, come take our course, the world's your oyster, you can do whatever you want. I think that does us as educators a terrible disservice. I've been teaching online at the graduate level, completely online classes for about 10 years. And in March, I will have been at Drexel for 10 years as a full-time employee and as an adjunct professor. And I really don't like that phrase because it cuts out the synchronous element. And as soon as students see that there's a synchronous element in the course, they start going back to the marketers and the program managers and say, hey, wait a minute, you told me anytime, anywhere, and that's why I'm taking this program, et cetera, et cetera. So that's something that's really diametrically opposed to where I'm coming from. I want to know what you have to think as well, some insights that you have from yourself, your own experiences, your colleagues, your students. If you don't agree with me, then say you don't agree with me, and tell me why. Tell us why. And then we'll try to see if we can't reach the middle ground or say, oh, that's a good argument. So here's my title on the left. I teach at the College of Engineering, College of Business, School of Education from time to time, and I'm going to have a stab at the College of Medicine starting in January. That's kind of exciting. Basically, I do organizational behavior, leadership, management, that sort of stuff. Things that, topics that lend themselves to a rich dialogue in the threaded discussions area, the asynchronous elements as well as in the synchronous elements. So it's not chemistry 101 or physics 101 that doesn't necessarily have a lot of dialogue. It does lend itself as a set of topics. They do lend themselves as a set of topics to that type of exchange. And as I said, I've been working with Blackboard Vista and predecessor apps for a while. This is our organization, Instructional Technology Support. On the left is the online learning team. This is our Academic Technology Innovation Group, and then the Client Services team. So those are the three areas that I'm responsible for. But my real passion is in administration, is teaching online. Really passionate about that. So what we're going to talk about, or what some faculty have to say, and what students have to say about having synchronous chat in their online courses, and what I call a couple of the myths. And I've got 4 of those for you. The first is, anytime, anywhere is the only way that you can do this. In order to get the students to get the enrollment, you have to tell them, whatever you want to do, it's an online course, have at it. You want to leave the stuff all till the end, or you just want to do things asynchronously when you're at the beach, or when you're up at 2 o'clock in the morning. I think my son was going to bed at 4 o'clock this morning when I was getting up. But that's just the way they work. The second myth is that professors and program managers and administrators think that they wouldn't be able to get their students into an online environment in an effective way. The students will either think that it's impossible to participate in a synchronous manner, or if they do come kicking and screaming, they won't find any value in it. And I've got comments from students on both sides of the aisle that I want to share with you a bit later on. And the fourth one is, the faculty say, oh, it's going to be too much work. Oh, I can't do this. It's another thing I have to know how to do. I have to learn this, or I have to learn that, or I have to be in a certain place at a certain time. And I'm here to tell you that when I did a quasi experiment, doing a course completely asynchronously and then doing it with a diminished asynchronous component and an added synchronous component, the workload actually went down. Because how many people have threaded discussions in their classes, or support people have threaded discussions in their class? I mean, that's like fundamental, right? That's the engagement, that's the richness, that's the student to student, that's the student to educator, that's just the foundation of online learning, I think, along with content dissemination and the assessment piece. But I actually found that the workload went down to some extent. Okay, so this isn't the approach, this is an approach. It seems to have worked over time. It's morphed a little bit from what students have told me, from whatever other educators have told us. One of the best things about supporting online learning and talking with faculty and helping them design courses and figure out how to overcome barriers and struggles, et cetera, and address various challenges is that you learn a lot just by listening to them. Is that right? I mean, you learn a lot about how to help the next faculty person who comes in from listening to and paying attention to the faculty people that you're already supporting, or your colleagues if in fact you're faculty. So this is an approach that I've coopered together over a certain amount of time. The way that I approach the synchronous elements in the course is to have a set of topics ready that are aligned with the reading assignments that we've done. So when we're going to have a chat session at night, the students already know from the syllabus what we're going to talk about. So they have some sort of framework. They do not know what the questions are going to be. And at the end, I'm sorry, I should have said this before, and I actually meant to make this the second slide. These are all online at my faculty website. If you want me to send you the PowerPoint slide set, I will send it to you. You can have the whole thing. You can steal it. You can make it your own. I don't care. My card's right here. All I ask is that you send me an email. So if I know that you're interested in getting the slides, if you send me an email, and I'll return it to you attached and use it however you care to. So I saw a couple people taking notes. The students are really the core of the chat session. I tell them that I'm the least important person in the room. The engagement that they're having with each other and talking about their workplaces and their struggles with leadership or motivation or conflict in the workplace or stress or whatever it might be, the topic that we're talking about, or the set of topics we're talking about on a given evening, it's really important that they are the center of the discussion. What I see my role as, and what my role has really become over time, is to throw different topics out there as we're going along, and also make sure that everybody's engaged. So if I see somebody that's not participating, I'll try to say, Sally, what do you think? We haven't heard from you in a while. Or Rich, you made a nice comment a couple minutes ago. What do you think about this topic? We're on another topic now, something like that. So keep the engagement going, and I've got some strategies about that as well relative to how many people should be in a chat room at any one time. Because a lot of people will say, well, how many people do you have in your online class? The most I've done is 33 or so, and that was 2 sections. And at the graduate level, that's a lot of work. That's a lot of engagement. They were MBA students, and I've done classes. The one I have now has 6 students in it, and that brings other struggles, right? Because I think you need critical mass to have engagement mean anything. It's kind of hard if you don't have too many students. So if 4 people had shown up today, we'd have a much less rich exchange than if this number of people showed up. So I'd rather have a reasoned number. Now if the room were full, crowd control, I need Peter back there with a bat to be able to control people, right? But so there's a balance, and I'll share with you some insights about that as well. Energizing the conversation is important. I use some of the audio and the video features that WIMBA has to offer to make sure that that energy level stays high. Again, it doesn't really matter what the application is or what the power link or the building block is, or if it's the inherent chat tool inside the learning management system. You do have to pay attention to the text chat and the audio chat. Most of what we do is in the text area, but we do some audio chat and some video as well. Video is optional. Audio, I make it as a requirement in the sessions, and I'll illustrate that in a minute as far as exactly what I'm talking about. But you have to pay attention as the facilitator of what's happening, because if they're going down the wrong path, talking about a certain topic, you need to be able to bring them back and sort of redirect them and correct them. So that's a key role that you need to play in there as well. So it's not like toss another question up there and go get a glass of wine, turn off your video, and come back to the chat room when you're ready and have your glass of wine and let them talk. It absolutely can't work that way. And obviously, this is nothing new to the synchronous area. That's the same thing you have to do with discussions, right? Threaded discussions, you have to pay attention and make sure that they're, getting it correctly, and when they're engaging with each other, that they're staying on the path per the readings and the learning that you've got in the class. So here's a little bit of a takeaway. This is my model that I've used for a while. It seems to work okay. I have 4 sessions, 2 in the first half of the term. Typically in our 11-week schedule, it's weeks 2 and 4, and then in the second half I have 2 as well in weeks 7 and 9. And they are required, and they are graded, and they are each 5% of the grade. So if they blow off these sessions, 2 of these sessions, they can't get an A. So there's no makeup. I sort of hold their feet to the fire. And it seems to work, and I think you'll see that from some of the student feedback that I get in at the end of the last session that we do each term. I usually run them from 7:30 to 9 or from 7 to 8:30. Right now I'm doing 7 to 8:30. And I will tell you, if you think 90 minutes is a long time, it goes by very, very quickly. Almost every session, students say, somebody says, I can't believe we're already done with the session. And I guarantee you, every time you do this, at the end of the last session, somebody will say, I can't believe we've done all these chats and this is the last one, and we don't have any more. Because they can't believe that it goes by just that quickly. So 60 minutes, I've heard some people do that, 45 minutes, whatever it might be. 90 minutes seems to work for me. We have an 18-chapter textbook, and we've got 4 chat sessions in which to discuss at least a couple topics from each of those chapters. So that's a bit of rigor, and it's pretty dense, and you need the 90 minutes. I would never be able to cover it, to my satisfaction anyway, and get their feedback at the end of that last session if I did anything short of 90 minutes. I have not tried longer, and I've had feedback from students. I used to do 5 sessions, and they convinced me to do 4, so that model changed a while back.
Is this in the 10-week terms? Or?
This is in a 10-week term and then a week for finals. Right now we're in week 5 at Drexel. We start later. We started September 21st. We start a little bit later typically. And the reason we're on quarters is because we're co-op school. So the students, it's based on the 6-month model, right? So you can take a co-op position for 2 terms, 6 months, and then come in the classes for 2 terms, 6 months, and go back, and that sort of thing. But it's based on 10 weeks of class, 1 week of finals, and then we have a break of 1 week typically, and then jump right into the next term.
Would you recommend any more for a longer semester?
I think I would, and as a matter of fact, that's a great question because I mentioned the College of Medicine. That's a semester-based course. I have never done a semester-based online class. So I'm really excited about this opportunity. Not only can I say that I do College of Medicine, which is really neat, but it'll challenge me because they're coming from a different direction and it's a semester-based course. So I think what I will do, part of the approach also has to be to not violate what's happening in a program. I mean, if you're the lone wolf and you're in a program where there's no synchronous stuff that's required and graded, you're going to have a tough road to hoe unless you've got program manager or dean or whoever, director backing for you to do that when the students maybe give a call to the office and say, hey, Scheuermann's trying to have synchronous that's graded and mandatory. We don't do that in this program. What's going on? So early on, I got buy-in from the department that they would back me on this. So I should probably make that a bullet point in the slide, get departmental buy-in before you try this. But there are other things that you can do that I have on another slide here that aren't that controversial and it would give you a foray into this. So I think that answers your question, right? Actually, no, it didn't. The rest of my answer is, in the College of Medicine, I don't think they have any required synchronous anywhere. So, because I want to get to teach again with them, I'll probably play by their rules this time and probably have it be all asynchronous. But I'll probably try to also introduce some optional things that are synchronous for them, and then see how it goes down the road and try to build it in. If I did have the backing of the department, I would probably do one more. I'd probably do 5, is the straight answer. I always give long answers to short questions. And notice Eastern here. When you start doing things like this, get in the habit of putting the time zone, right, in all of your times. And even if you don't have any students now outside your time zone, you may well in the future, and you've already got it built in, and you've got that mindset, the way you build out the syllabus and detail it on your home page or in the calendar or whatever. And you may have a student who's traveling, and they're in a different time zone, and they go in at 7 o'clock, and guess what? It's Chicago, and it's 6 o'clock. And they're in there, at 7, so they're an hour late. Now, another takeaway, 7 to 10 participants is what I have found to be optimal. Again, it's graduate level, it's really dense, it's 90 minutes. For that model, 7 to 10 seems to work. I have 6 right now, and we did 2 already, 1 in week 2 and 1 in week 4. We had 1 last week. It was pretty good. They did a good job. They were really engaged. So it's a good group of students. I didn't have to do any lighting of fires underneath them, and because it can get pretty tedious if they're not really engaged and excited and talking with each other in the chat session. And if you have more than 10 to 13, it gets to be a little too confusing. And what I do, as soon as I get 14 to 16 students, I'll change the model and I'll do 2 nights. I'll do a Thursday night and a Wednesday night. If I have more than 21 students, when I had those, 33 or whatever, I had 3 chat nights. I had a Tuesday, a Wednesday, and a Thursday, and I still did 4 sessions. So I split them up because I think that that's the model that works for my topic and my style and for graduate. Yes?
Did you assign them for an evening, or what if everyone wanted to go on Thursday night or something?
Wow, have you seen this before? Yes, I do assign them in the syllabus. Let's say it's 21 students. I do 7 for Thursday, 7 for Wednesday, 7 for Tuesday, so they know which group they're in. And they know from the calendar and the syllabus what the dates are for their night of the week. What I allow them to do is to switch. So if these 4 folks were on Thursday and you needed Wednesday because your kid's soccer night is Thursday, you write to the people that have the night that you want because you can see their names in the syllabus. You don't write me, you write to them and say, hey, my kid's soccer night is, I need to switch to, and you know that it's going to be across the term. You get somebody to agree, then you write me and say, hey, I switched with, and then I changed it in the syllabus, and I've had no administrative load to work all that out, except to change the syllabus to put you in that other group and put the colleague that switched with you in the other one in the syllabus, so everybody still knows who's in the respective groups. They can also do that on a session-by-session basis. So if your boss in week 3 comes up and says, you have to go to Denver next week to EDUCAUSE, that's 2 weeks away, but go with it here. And you say, well, I didn't know that, I got this, you're going to be away that night. You can write somebody that's in the other group that you could do because you're going to be back from the conference and switch just for that week. And you write me an email then inside Vista and you tell me, that you switched for that night, and it's only for that week, whatever, and you're good to go. So there's last minute stuff, you know, whatever, as long as the students tell me what's going on, so that when I go in the room at 6:45 or whatever, I basically know who's going to show up, I'm fine. Did that answer your question? It works really well, and they appreciate the opportunity to switch, because some people like Thursday because that's the end of the week, other people like Tuesday because they want to get it out of the way, you know, etc. A lot of people like Wednesday because they've had more time to read the stuff and get prepared, and they don't want to give up their Thursday, you know, party night or whatever, because that's when they go out with their work colleagues, for instance. And it really does diminish my administrative load. They don't write me and say, I need you to switch me. That's not the way I do it. Plus, the benefit there is Bill's learning community. They start talking to each other before the class, in many cases, before the class has even started. Hey, you know, I've got kids and they have soccer, so you start talking with each other about various things, and you're starting to develop some relationships in the class. This is a fairly new slide, or set of slides, and I'm doing another presentation like this in February. And they want me to focus on best practices. And some of this is from the reading that I do about Synchronous. Some of it's from experience, and some of it's from colleagues. It is a good idea to set the dates and the times early, get them in the syllabus, publicize them as widely as possible, and don't change them. Because as soon as the students, I like to call graduate students course participants, as soon as they put the dates in their iPhone, they got it made. As soon as they're in their calendar, in their iPhone, or their smartphone, or Outlook, or whatever, they're good to go, because everything else is going to revolve around those dates then, because they coded them into their personal and professional calendar. Establish rubrics and protocols. How are they going to be graded? And how are they to perform in the room? What's expected? How do I do a chat? What's that mean? Do I speak? Do I put text in? Do I throw slides in? How do I do this? That's all in the syllabus, and that's the other thing I'll share with you. If you want my syllabus, I'll send you the whole thing. There's a whole section in there on synchronous chat sessions. It talks about no makeup, you know, that sort of, you need to be in there for the whole 90 minutes. That's on the next slide. Provide a tutorial or a video clip. I go in and make a recording on my desktop. This is how you go into the room. This is how you come into the link. I navigated to it already here. So if I were to go back out to week 4, in my video recording of this, I would say, okay, we're in week 4. This is how you go into the week 4 room. Here's all of our elements. You scroll down to the bottom, and here's the link to the October 14th room. And this is the screen you will see. And the next thing I want you to do is run the setup wizard, so that they set themselves up for success when they use the application, because there are certain requirements of their setup that they need to have established in order to have a good experience in the Windows classroom environment. And again, it doesn't matter what the app is. There's probably some sort of wizard to check for audio and check for video and check for text and pop-ups, etc. in Java and whatever might be required. So I tell them to make sure that they do the setup wizard, and I tell them to do that every time they're coming into a room, even if they've been in a room before, especially if it's a computer that's not used solely by them. My son's 26, he's home for a couple weeks, he's going to go back to Chicago. I have no idea what he's done to that machine at my house. I know he was in some Windows-based GarageBand kind of thing the other day that he downloaded. I mean, the configuration of that machine may be completely different. So if I had a chat night tonight, you can bet that I would run that wizard, and I'd run it hundreds of times, just to make sure that I'm setting myself up for success going into that environment. So those tutorials, those video clips, hey, this is how you do it, this is how you navigate, this is how you find it. Again, this particular bullet point doesn't have much to do with synchronous stuff. It has to do with a lot of stuff. If you've got things that they need to navigate to, and they need to know how to utilize and locate, etc., in your online environment, or whatever it might be, website, etc., those things really do help. And obviously, you know, you can repurpose those then. You make them generic. You don't talk about fall or winter or spring or summer. You say, hey, this is how you navigate into here. It may not be exactly the same as this. Some of the dates might be different, but in general, this is how you navigate to the area, this is what you need to do, etc. I really recommend that especially if you're not getting backing from the program immediately, or you don't know if you'll be backed, start by using sessions for which there isn't any grade. Maybe it could be a discussion that they have available that's optional, that would discuss what's happening on the midterm, or the next assignment, or the final, or some other element of the course. Hey, I'm going to be in this room, this is where the link's going to be, it's optional, and then come in and discuss this, come ask your questions, whatever it might be, and I always want them to then tell me what they thought of that, so that I have feedback as far as value that was added or not by having that made available to them. A lot of what I do in my online classes, and have done fairly religiously over time, has been modifying, tweaking, and making changes, etc., whatever it might be, because of student input. Provide a practice room in advance. Right now we are doing Thursday evenings. In week 2, I provided a practice room and told them that I would be in there Tuesday night and Wednesday night for an hour if they wanted to come in and just try it with me, the text area, the audio, maybe the video, whatever they wanted to do. Can they be heard? Can they see the slides that I've put up, etc. And I told them that it was completely optional. I'll be in there from 7 to 8 Eastern. You can come in at 10 minutes to 8, and I'll still be in there. You don't have to come for 60 minutes. And again, this doesn't have anything to do with WIMBA. I think this is just the best practice to set them up for success for the real session that will be graded, right? And kind of the underlying unstated message is, if you don't do a practice room, and you come in to the live one that gets graded, and something's not right because you didn't learn about how to do thus and so in the practice ones, well, this is for real, and it's 5% of your grade. Oh, I couldn't get in, and I didn't know how to type in the text, and et cetera, et cetera. I couldn't be heard, so I couldn't make my audio comment. And another value add there, I think, is encouraging student-to-student use. A tremendous benefit here, I think, is for group work. In talking with the instructional designer about how we're going to build out my class together for the College of Medicine for January, she asked about group work. And this is a perfect example of something that would enable group work to take place where there's no load on you at all, except to set the room up. And you tell the various groups, hey, throughout the course, wherever, maybe you have a separate page that's just the group rooms, in whatever chat feature you're using in your LMS or external to it, and you tell them, hey, there's your space. Get together for your group project, etc. Bobby?
I was going to just add that I've had a lot of success. My group of graduate students also, but I set a WIMBA room up just for them in each one of the courses and tell them from the very beginning, I'm not coming in this room at all. This is your room. You can do whatever you want with it. You can use it whenever you want. And on their own, they organize nights that they get together, and they have learner-to-learner discussions, and they use it to collaborate on their, I mean, it's just worked really, really well. Nothing I did.
Right.
Just set up the room.
Zero workload, essentially, and tremendous benefit to the students. And we say this all the time in online learning. If they choose to avail themselves of the opportunity. All we can do in many cases is set the stage, provide the opportunity, content, discussions, video clips, links to this, whatever it is, and how much they avail themselves of it or not is sort of the great unknown. Just like face-to-face, when I was teaching at Rosemont, I would show up like a half an hour early back in the day when I did face-to-face. I'd show up 45 minutes, whatever, I'd show up real early. I'd set up that whole room however I wanted it that night, make sure it was set perfectly. If somebody came in early and wanted to talk about an assignment or a grade or something they just didn't want to talk about in a large group, I was there. I always stay in the chat room until everybody is gone. I'm the last one to leave. I think that's what everybody does with face-to-face, by and large. Get there early, stay there late, same thing applies. And sometimes, when you've got what I would call really anal students, and one time I was teaching, facilitating an online class in the pharmaceutical MBA at Drexel, and these were PharmD folks and PhDs. This was before I had a PhD. they're coming back for this MBA, right? They've already got all the medical credentials to be pharmacists, et cetera, et cetera. These folks did not want an A. They wanted 100. If they earned 3.75 on the discussions instead of 4, I guarantee you I got an email. They were so competitive. So my point is, it almost became a contest. Who could get in the room first on a given evening? So they actually challenged me to get there ahead of them on this arrive early part. They did skedaddle pretty quickly at the end. They didn't wait around to see if I'd stay as late as that. Audio and video, if you have that in your chat room or in your application that you can use, it really does enhance the experience. Typically, I will use my webcam to introduce new topics. I will pop in there once in a while so that they can see me, to put a face and a voice with the name and the still photos they see in the learning management system. The audio is sort of taken off, and they really do enjoy that to the extent that I don't think, it wasn't this group because I haven't canvassed them yet formally for their feedback, but the last time I did this, one of the students in the last chat night when I was asking them for their opinions on various things said, we need to do more audio. It should be like almost all audio. They just want to go in and they just want to talk. They just want to go back and forth and have a regular dialogue in the application and segue away from the text-based element. So it's something to think about. I'll talk to you about my rubrics in a second, so I won't add anything to that. Energize the conversation, exactly what I said before. And what I do in order to do tracking is I have an Excel spreadsheet, even though in this case of WIMBA, it'll tell you who came in the room when, so you've got sort of a tracking mechanism in there. I have an Excel spreadsheet where I log, I have all the students in there already, I have one, a couple columns for each night, and that's how I track if they made their audio comments or not, and also to make little notes for myself about highlights in the conversation, either in text or in audio, to say, okay, Stephanie made this great, insightful comment, and I just flip over to Excel real quick, and I type in, great comment, note to self, for when I'm grading later, when the chat's over, right? Another best practice, maybe it's not necessarily a best practice, but one that I've used over time is, I don't go to bed that night until the grades are in. I grade as soon as the chat's over. It's fresh, I have the archive done, I've got my notes right there in Excel, I know who was late, I know who was early, I know who, whatever. I know all the stuff that I need to know. I always try to do the grading before I go to bed that night. But that Excel spreadsheet opened in another window, like you saw me toggle before to the LMS, really does help. It's hard without that sort of additional element to put together as much as you need, I think, to do the grading that quickly. A lot of people, I think, just archive it and then they go back and listen to it again and sort of and watch it again and sort of do their grading with a second session. If that works, that's fine too. Okay, now for the students, some things that we can encourage them to attempt to do. I should take this cursor off the screen here. To set themselves up for success might be here. Make sure that you encourage them to use the practice room. I've really stressed that more of late than I did in the past. Do the setup wizard, whatever it's called. Learn the interface. How do you do text chat? How do you size the text window? How do you know who's in the room? How do you raise your hand? How do you use the polling feature? How do you do the audio? Some people think they just click the button and let go with the mouse and then they're talking and nothing's coming through. Everybody's in the room virtually waiting for them to say something. Review the rubric, so everything should be in the syllabus as far as what's expected for the chat sessions. Read it. You know how you'll be graded, you know what the protocols are, etc. Attend the entire session. I do require that they're there for the 90 minutes. Showing up 10 minutes late and leaving 15 minutes early is not going to enable them to earn full credit. Have the textbook handy. A lot of times we will say in a question that I've got on a PowerPoint slide, let's go look at table 4.2 on page 193. And if they have their textbook with them, even if they're on travel, or I'm on travel, they will have a better chance to participate. And you can sort of tell who doesn't have their text with them because they won't jump into the conversation until it's going. This isn't the change of this. although you can do that if you're using a Mac. You can tell who does not have their textbook with them because they don't enter the conversation right away. The other people would get engaged and they'll figure it out, and then they'll start making posts about the topic. Avoid instant messaging lingo. Look, I violated my own, I put I am. And emoticons. You know, they're built-in emoticons. I don't need them. For, you know, K-12, maybe emoticons would be great. Graduate students, I think emoticons are kind of silly. Although they do throw them in there once in a while. But I've got it right in the protocols now. I have a lot of international students, people who, for whom English is not their first language, in many cases in engineering, right? And that's kind of a typical thing. You have a cross-section of folks, different ages, different experiences, certainly different backgrounds. Not everybody knows what IMO means, or BTW, or LOL, or the others. And a lot of them, I think, have sort of dual meanings. So they would just get lost in the conversation if you had all this IM lingo going in there. This is not an IM thing, in my estimation, and if it's not in the facilitator's estimation, that should be stated in the syllabus and stated in the protocols. You can IM other places, there's nothing wrong with IM, but in here, we need to, right? Do not correct typos. That's just another line of text that everybody has to read. So if you misspelled, I mean, when they do the there, and there mistake, just go, just keep going. We know what you meant, even if you're not using the right, we know, we got the meaning. And my protocol states that if we can get your meaning, just keep going. Don't correct. And I don't correct. I purposely throw a couple typos in there once in a while, because I'm the best typist, I'm certainly not the fastest typist. But if I make a mistake, sometimes I'll just let it go in there to show them that I can make a typo too, and we'll just keep going, because it's not the spelling, it's not graded anyway, and you have to tell them that, right? But it's the conversation, right? Like, it doesn't count anyway. They do need to be appropriate. Do not welcome latecomers. Just like face-to-face. I mean, if somebody walked in right now and said, hey, Mike, how you doing? I haven't seen you in years. You know, I'm sorry I'm late. You know, what have you talked about so far? Just totally destroyed our train of dialogue right now, right? Our train of thought, etc. What we were talking about. So I tell them, don't say anything to latecomers when they come in the room. If they want to send them a private message, which most of the chat features, chat apps will let you do, that's fine. I can't tell that's happening anyway. So if they want to do that, that's fine. But it will destroy a session if a popular student comes in late and 4, 5, 6 people welcome this latecomer. You just destroyed what was happening in the chat. Why do you have to spell all this stuff out? Well, if you do that ahead of time, you're going to be focused on the engagement for the 90 minutes instead of the rules and the corrections and all that other administrative and teacher stuff that could have been handled in another manner. Does it make the syllabus longer? Absolutely. Participate in a balanced manner. Don't try to take over the conversation, and don't sit in the back row and never say anything. Same as face-to-face, right? That's what you want. You want people engaged, sort of at the level that everybody else is participating, and that's ultimately what you would be shooting for. Last week, I track, after the session, I go and look at how many postings each person made, just as in the text area, just as a quick diagnostic for me. I'm sort of doing the quality thing as we're going along. You know, somebody got off track, somebody was inappropriate, somebody made a great comment, like Stephanie's I mentioned before. I've got all that in my Excel spreadsheet, but I don't have the raw number. So I go back afterwards and I look at the entire text chat and I do a quick diagnostic in Excel on how many postings in the text area each of the students made, as soon as the chat's over. Last week, the median was about 40 postings for these 6 students. I think I did 30-some, which is high for me. But they made some good comments, and I was going back and forth with them a little bit more than I usually do, and it wasn't to get them jump-started, even though there were only 6 students in there, but it was just a real engaging conversation. I can't believe we're doing it at this level of quality, really, and this level of activity with 6 students, but that's a pleasant surprise. Anyway, one of the students made 82 posts. So she earned 4 points instead of 5. So she got an 80. I mean, she was kind of like over the top. Ooh, pick me. But I don't have to pick her. She's just putting the comments in there, right? So she participated at double the level of what the other folks in the room had done. So that's clearly So she wrote me an email. I only earned 4 out of 5. What happened? You know, most of the time they say you took a point away from me. But here's my take on this. They come into the chat room with how many points? How many points do they come in that room with? 0. They don't have 5 and I subtract. They have 0 when they add, and I show them how to add. This is how you get 5. So I didn't take away 1. They didn't earn 5. Right? Kind of a neat way to put it, I think. Anyway, I got an email. That was not balanced participation. Encourage participation by others. If you see that Sally is, or John is reticent, you know, say, hey John, hey Sally, you know, what do you think, etc. Kind of pay attention to what everybody else is doing in the room too, not just what you're saying. And I always require that before they make the one required audio comment for that chat session, that they use the hand raise feature. Crowd control. We've got a dialogue going in the text area. We're talking about a topic. I want to pick when the person can speak. Not, hey Mike, I want to say, or hey class, I've got this idea about that topic, you know. So they did a little hand raise. I can see when they've, in what order they've raised their hand. I was just going to bring up the interface real quick by going into this room. I'm going to violate my own rule by just taking a dive. Get right in here. Most of you have probably seen this. Hopefully I haven't timed out. Oh, there is something wrong with Java on that machine, so you won't go there. But what I was going to show you was just the hand raise feature. So here's some opinion. You know, any comments so far? Questions? Argument? Yes.
I have one about the emoticons.
Okay.
The I am
lingo.
Yeah, that I can certainly understand. What my question is if you take the emoticons out of the text-based chat, how do you incorporate the affective domain? Because you've got a two-dimensional communication stream going on here.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're talking about nothing but fact-based, that's one thing. But if you're engaging people emotionally, and we know it's important to engage emotionally. We also know that in a text-based stream, if you don't incorporate that emotion somewhere, whether it's with a little smiley face or it's with a little ha-ha in parentheses, there is a probability of misinterpretation in terms of what you're saying. So I guess what I'm saying, Mike, is most of the research says use those emoticons, and I'm just wondering why you took that approach.
First off, I agree with you that you can't really have engagement, one would argue, unless you have the affective piece in there. You really don't have engagement if you don't have a way to include that and discern it. My only answer, I don't want to say defense, my only answer is that I use the audio and I use the video. So they have every opportunity to get the affective piece in there, albeit at a somewhat diminished level. But maybe I'll give it a try, and then I'll include that question at the end and say, hey, you know, this is one of the few classes that I've allowed emoticons in. What do you think that added or didn't, and see what their take is? But I would really like to see the research too. And obviously you've done a lot of reading, as I have. I haven't seen that particular. I've read a lot about the affective part, but emoticons specifically, I think I build that in through the audio and certainly through the video.
Yeah, as soon as you get into the audio and the video, you've got a different dimension there. So there's,
right.
I mean, you can see intonation, you can look at people's faces, there's a whole different way you can build that in. I had another quick question.
Well, let me give you one more comeback for that first question though. The other thing I would say is if I only had text, in other words, if the app, LMS, whatever, did not have audio or video, I probably would have the emoticons available and maybe even encourage their use.
I have another quick question for you. I love the balance here that you've got 4 chats going on. My question to you is how about, I'm going to pick on faculty in particular, who are introduced to these synchronous tools and see this as a way of, in terms of pedagogy, going back to face-to-face. So we're going to have a session every Thursday from 7 to 8:30. And really they're almost too reliant, because they're going back to something that they're used to. You know, they're used to synchronous kind of pedagogy. Any input on how to sort of discourage that, or encourage it, or balance it, or?
Well, I think you'd have to look at the rest of their course and the rest of their approach. If they have downplayed the rich opportunity that we all know exists in the discussions by saying, you know, we're not going to use that part, we're just going to do this, I think they've done themselves and their students a disservice. And I would try to bring them back to the concept that threaded discussions is really where the rubber meets the road in online learning. I've seen that in the literature. I've experienced that myself. I've heard that from other faculty. I really believe that that's the essence of online learning, along with the 24/7 by 365 availability of content, grades, emailing the instructor, or posting something, as well as a lot of the other components. I would have. That's not unlike challenges that we've all faced with faculty and facilitators and TAs and others in a variety of areas. And we've had to say, like, we've been, you know, encouraged by their statements to say, well, maybe think about this, or think about, or did you? That'd be a kind of a slippery slope. But instructional designers and faculty support people, I think, can dance pretty quickly, as a rule, if they're worth anything, and they can handle tough challenges. And that's kind of a tough one, because that's somebody that says, hey, they've got this now, that's where I'm going to go. Right, and then they don't have to worry about face-to-face versus online. That's good. It might be a good challenge to have, but I think it's also a challenge that you wouldn't have very often. But still a challenge. Okay, so here's what some students have had to say. In my last of the 4 chat sessions, in 1 group or 2 groups or 3 groups, whatever I've got, I always ask them 4 questions with the quiz feature. And essentially, it's this question: should I eliminate these chat sessions in future offerings of this course and make them completely asynchronous? In other words, this has required synchronous elements. When I offer it next time, would you recommend that I not do that? I did the pink for Breast Cancer Month. This is I wanted to say that before. It's kind of a different looking template, but it's actually in Microsoft, so I used it, so I thought it was appropriate. Anyway, sidebar. So that's the very question that I asked them. At the end of the session, I take about 15 minutes to make sure I have time with the students. Of course, it depends on how many students I've got. To ask them 4 questions. This is one of the 4. I always ask it every time I run the class that has synchronous elements. And they do not know what the questions are going to be. I said before, they don't know what the topic questions are going to be for the chapters. They know what chapters, but they don't know the questions. So they can't just have tunnel vision and know what they want to say about certain topics. They have no idea that these questions are going to come at them at all. So here's some responses. This is from the summer quarter. Should not eliminate, very helpful, provide examples, current workplaces, helps us understand and visualize some of the topics. Keep them. It's the first one I took that has live chats. I think it's the only one in the program that has required live chat. And it's nice to see everyone's immediate responses, especially when we all have such diverse backgrounds. So you can see some degree of richness in that extemporaneous response. Know the chats are very useful, an essential part of this course. A lot of communication, idea sharing through the online chat. We call them OCs and TDs in the class. Then there is on the TD side. I think having 5 or 6 for 1 hour might be a little better. So there's a person who thinks the opposite of what I started with, and then went away from other student input in the past. I used to have 5 that were shorter, and they said, why don't you make them longer and do 4? So here's a person who wants me to go backwards, to the extent that they might want 50% more than they have now, and albeit for a shorter period of time. So here's back in winter. No! And these are direct quotes. So the exclamation points and everything that are written, that's their entry. Please not eliminate. Great way to garner everyone's thoughts. No, I like to make me feel like I am in a more interactive environment. Their word, not mine. Or his or her word, not mine. No, keep these chats. They're very beneficial. Class learning and learning experience. They bring a personal feel to this virtual class. This was a term ahead of that. I'm going backwards in time. keep them, allows direct interaction, makes it feel like a classroom atmosphere, makes people a little bit more accountable to this class, and you can hear people answer questions, keeps them up to date with the reading, knowing it kept me up to date with the reading, knowing that I needed to do this chat. So because they knew that this date was looming and we were going to talk for 90 minutes about these chapters, they actually got into the reading more deeply. I think the chat will continue to improve and provide interesting classroom-type medium, etc. Student-to-student chatting should be considered. There's an advocate for give them their space, let them use it as they see fit. We didn't talk too much about group work. I have optional group work in the class, not required group work, so I need to pay more attention to having these spaces available to them beyond the practice room if they want to do group work in their papers, etc., so that they have that opportunity. So this was a little bit older one. Keep them being able to associate voice with a response. Because we don't meet face-to-face, this is more important. Some online programs have, and some of our MBA programs do this, they have a week where they get together and then they're online for most of the term, and then they get together again at the end, or they come to campus and have a class together, a real intense short class, like they're doing it every day for 5 days or something. So that's actually a class, so they already know each other, and then they go into an online environment for an entire online experience, and then maybe they'll come back later on and do another on-campus experience as part of the program. I think that's something that MBA students, professionals, etc., have tended to gravitate towards, sort of these hybrid kinds of things. So in some cases they have met each other, but in this program typically they have not. Valuable addition to the takeaways that we receive in this class. I'm always talking to them about takeaways. I talk about takeaways for you today, some things that you could actually put into practice or think about using with faculty that you give counsel to. Okay, this is the other side of the coin. Just a sampling of some of the, yes, you should eliminate the synchronous part, just to be even-handed. And I'll show you percentages, sort of a quantitative spin on this in a minute. Yes, now this is from summer, this is past summer. Yes, the timing is tough for hardworking adults. Almost everybody in my classes are working full-time, families, all that sort of stuff, other things on their plates, travel. I would focus more on any time, any place. So this person drank the Kool-Aid from the marketing folks, and by gosh, that's what they want. The OCs offer value, but I think the same value can come from, say, hosting each person's midterm final for review and potential grading, like peer review of the writing assignments. I'm not sure what that connection is all about. I will tell you that one of my strategies to head off some of their angst or their objections, or to give them an opportunity to take a different class that doesn't have required synchronous, is I open up, because I'm an administrator of the Blackboard Vista installation, I can open up my class whenever I want to, so I go in and I typically open it 2 weeks early. And I write all of the students who are in the Banner SIS an email and say, hey, the class is open, this is how you get in, take a look, and oh, by the way, there's required synchronous elements that are graded in this class for which there's no makeup. Right? So take a look at the syllabus. If you prefer to take this class at some other time when it is more convenient to do synchronous, that's up to you. Or take a different section of the class. Maybe they don't have synchronous. I have a colleague in Ann Arbor who actually used my class as a foundation, and he eliminated the online part and does completely asynchronous and does reflection papers as well as a midterm and a final to sort of augment that piece that he took out. So I think full disclosure is something, and some support, if not full support from the administrators is pretty fundamental. So here's from Winter. I would prefer not to do them, like being able to do the course when I want and not to have to log in at any specific time. For a number of years, when I tracked these insights from the students and gave presentations at conferences about this topic, I was able to say, and you don't see it demonstrated on the second one, but I was able to say that almost every student who said, yes, you should eliminate them, had a but statement. But once I got in, I really found them valuable. But once I worked them into my schedule, it really enhanced my learning. I hated doing it, but, so they always put a positive behind what I can, seemed to be perceived to be the negative. So there was always a plus-minus statement. That one clearly is not. I think making the asynchronous would really help. This is from spring, as I choose online classes for the flexibility, but I didn't remember that one being there. But I did enjoy the chat sessions, but I would miss it. There's two buts there.
Yeah.
I would miss it, but I did have difficulties in keeping this time clear of my schedule. So despite the fact that I told them 2 weeks ahead of time, I have the dates in the calendar, I have the dates in the syllabus, I have the dates on the home page. Somehow they weren't able to sync it with the calendar. So very interesting. We should eliminate because there may be some students in different time zones. That is a struggle. I have students that work for Lockheed Martin or Boeing, and they're in California or the state of Washington. And guess what? That's a three-hour time difference. They're in the chat room with us at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And if they're trying to do this from a workplace computer at Boeing or Lockheed Martin, defense and aerospace contractors and companies, they may have a bit of an issue with that. So, okay, here's the quantitative side of that. Sorry for the pink, but I guess it's good this month. The football players were wearing pink spikes at football games, I'm not bothered too much by this. So, back in winter, this is 4 they're not continuous terms, but there are 4 times that I facilitated a class in a row. 73% positive, 83% positive, 83% positive, and then in the summer, albeit with only 8 students, 87%. It used to be higher. Back in the day, it was over 90%. It was very rare that I would get, and the questions are asked in the quiz tool in WIMBA when it's it's anonymous. I'm sorry, it's synchronous, but it's anonymous. And don't put those 2 words together. And they weren't identified, so I couldn't match the grade, any kind of a grading with a negative or whatever semi-negative comment or positive comment wouldn't affect the grade. So it used to be more positive than this, but the fact that this is a bit of a ramp up is a bit encouraging to me. And I've got a small class again, hopefully in the winter, in January, when I do this one, I'll have 15, 20 students. Somebody would say, small sample size. Well. Okay, faculty, real quickly here. I've got about 15 minutes, I guess. This is a question I asked faculty. I found out from our administrators who had WIMBA active in their class, and again, could be whatever you're using. How did you use chat? What value did you find? I don't know how innovative it is, but I use Classroom to hold virtual office hours. That's one of the key ways to dip your toe in the water and see what you think about this, how you like it, what value it adds, and what your students think. It's optional, it's not graded. Online office hours, that's all through the literature. They log in, they turn on their webcam, and we talk as if we're in the same room. Students appreciate the live atmosphere. I will not read the whole thing. I thought that they would like this method better than the time-constricted live classroom. When they did the voiceover PowerPoints, they did not. They preferred the WIMBA class. Continues to enhance my graduate courses in toxicology. This is a dear colleague of ours that's in the faculty development area all the time. She has what she calls tox chats about her toxicology topics, and her students find pretty much value added through that mechanism. Sorry for the density of this, but it is a quote. I have a program in my computer that simulates a financial calculator operation. With that said, I was not only able to teach my students how to set the financial calculator up, but, so he's using sharing capability and displaying his desktop and his applications to the students that are in the room virtually, but also carry out time value of money, computations, bond valuation, etc. Obviously, he's teaching a finance class and finds some value in being able to share his desktop with students to actually show them how to go through the different steps and some of the things that they learn in the class. Sorry for that. I almost never wear these because I simply don't need them. So there's the online office hours. That must have been really bad. Again, always solicit student feedback. Should you keep them as regular parts of the class? If you started with them as optional or online office hours, should you segue into having some required element? Maybe for extra credit or makeup credit. Like now they've got an incentive to be in there as sort of a middle ground between online office hours and required and graded. Okay, you missed, you did badly on that paper or on that quiz or whatever. Guess what? I'm going to have a live classroom, whatever, a chat session in a week and a half. Here's the date, here's the time, here's where I'll put the link. You can make up, 75% of the credit if you come in there and we have a discussion about these topics and this is the protocol, etc. Maybe introduce a few mandatory sessions, and again, always monitor the student feedback. Make up credit. Preparation, another way to do it as an ungraded element I mentioned before, prep for the midterm, prep for the final, the papers that they might have to write. Student group work, we mentioned that a little bit. I have a librarian always in my online classes as a TA, as a ready resource for my students. So I could set up a session where they could go in and ask the librarian questions about the midterm paper because they need to write those in APA format. Professional engineers who do that sort of technical stuff for a living have really no idea what APA is about. So I have all kinds of APA resources, and it could be MLA, whatever format you want them in or not, which I would discourage you from just having it be the Wild West, but they have to write an APA so that if they have that librarian available to them in a live environment like that on a given evening or a set of evenings, I think that's a tremendous resource to bring to them as well, to offer them. Mandatory, maybe at a low level, maybe one session in the beginning, one towards the end of the term. Again, depending on if it's quarter-based or semester-based like we heard early on. You are able to provide instant feedback, learning styles, obviously, that would be all through the literature, right? The learning styles, the auditory learners, the visual learners, and that sort of stuff. And it really is important to focus on best practices. A couple of the things that have worked for me, that I've read about, that I've heard about, are in the slides that you've already seen. So here's the workload piece. This is a different class that I do, where I don't, this is graduate, it's essentially the same topic, but I don't have synchronous elements in there because that program I don't think would support me in doing it. I don't teach it a lot, don't facilitate this class online a lot, but I do it from time to time, and it's actually one of my favorite classes. So 40% of the grade is reflection papers, and 60% is threaded discussion. So that threaded discussion, that rich exchange of dialogue and information and thoughts about the topics, it's tremendously intense for me to read all of those postings, to judge all of those postings, to respond to many of those postings. So my workload in that instance is higher, I believe, than when I use this model. Now, it is fair to say that I've said that there's two papers and I made those two different pieces of the pie, one the midterm and one the final. But what I did here is the chats are 20% of the grade, 4 times 5, and the threaded discussions are 30%. And when I run my class that way, vis-a-vis the other class that has no synchronous element, in this case, my workload is diminished. I do 90 minutes. Yes, I show up a little bit early. Yes, I stay a little bit late. Yes, I do grade it when we're done. But essentially, that's a finite time frame. When you're in threaded discussions, and you've got an added element of asynchronous discussion going on, and you need to go in there and read those postings, redirect, correct, applaud, question, go back and forth with, the workload is higher when you're doing it. So I'm here to tell you that over time, when I've done this both ways, and I've done this many times both ways, my workload in this environment is lower than when I have it as a completely asynchronous class. Does anybody recognize this journal, Internet and Higher Education? Does anybody get this? Well, there's another takeaway for you. This is actually pretty good. And instead of you having to read the whole quote here, from earlier this year, to brainstorm ideas and formulate a problem to be addressed, teams favored video-audio conferencing with simultaneous usage in chat. To keep track of the discussion and create a chat log, teams found audio-video conferencing essential for making important decisions because it allowed for immediate feedback and real-time discussions. I have a couple segments from that same article. But back again, this is an Elsevier publication. It's called The Internet and Higher Education. I've read it for years. I've gotten a lot of really good material out of this particular journal. I would say it's a less academically intense journal. It's not real thick, but it is insightful from time to time. There's the same article. It is no longer enough to rely on a single technological solution, e.g. discussion board. In other words, their findings were, from their research that they highlight in the article, that having the synchronous elements in there was of value, and we shouldn't pigeonhole ourselves into being practitioners of thread and discussion boards only. This is the last one from this. Oh no, I'm sorry. This is a different article. This is from the International Journal of E-Learning, corporate, government, healthcare, and higher education. That's what that blue bar is right there. Kind of hard to read, but if you get the slides from me, you'll be able to see it. Anybody familiar with that one? I think that's an AACE publication. Consider including interactive components is the essence of that particular one. Another one, same article, this is from 2008. Students will avail themselves of the opportunity when afforded a synchronous environment. You build it, they will come. You use it, they'll find value in it. You give it a try, you'll probably find value in it. This is that same article. Shouldn't we as instructors make use of all available tools? And there's a whole host of them. And again, if we cast a wide net, base future offerings on our own experience as well as the insight that we get from students who have been through a course with us, aren't we going to have something richer when we go forward? So, here's my myths again. I hope I've dispelled the anytime, anywhere one. I am able to get my students there. They work, they travel, they're professionals. They have, in some cases, multiple engineering degrees. They're PEs, they're professional engineer certification. They have children, they have spouses, they have families, they have elder care, they have community obligations, they have church obligations, they've got overflowing plates like all of us. I don't have the numbers, but it's way above 95% of the students across all of my experience in 10 years have been able to make the chats and have been able to be in there for the entire time. Despite the fact that across that whole time span, the characteristics I just listed for you of those students have been the prevalent characteristics. I believe that I've shown that they do find value in them, and I am here to tell you that it is not more work to do this. In some cases, it's actually less. So, any other questions or insights or comments, or I don't agree with you, or people tell me differently?
I'm just curious to know the prep work. How many hours do you think it takes to build what you build and what you deliver on a weekly? That means in preparation prior to a quarter.
The short answer is, if you're going to deliver in the fall, develop in the summer.
Okay.
Do not leave any development for the delivery term. Bobby's shaking her head. Have other folks had that experience? I thought that when I started this, I'll use my hands here. Here's my development term, right? My development time frame. I thought I was going to be able to do this and finish the last part of my development while I was delivering the class in the following term. This model does not work for a completely online class, and one that I'm passionate about, that I want to do a good job with, that I had to develop from scratch, not just tweak what somebody else gave me, and it's at the graduate level. This is the model. Now, that doesn't answer how many hours. I've never enumerated it, but let me just take a stab at it, because I'm going to go through it here shortly, because every time we get a new edition of the textbook I use, I advocate being compensated to redesign the course from scratch. I've done that like 4 times with the class that I've highlighted here today. And normally program managers are okay with that, because it is a significant amount of work. 11 weeks, 6 hours a week, something like that. What I do, I wanted to bring my textbook, the last edition, when I did the 7th edition. When I read a textbook that I'm going to use in a completely online class, and I'm going through that textbook, I've always got a pen, and I use the margins, and I highlight anything that I come across that would be a good discussion topic, and I mark TD out in the margin, and I underline, so I know that what I underlined over there is a thread discussion opportunity. So when I go back to build my discussions, all I have to do is flip back through my textbook. I don't build it as I read. I cue myself to build it later as I go through the text. And the same thing with chat. When I see a highlight or a quote or an insight from the authors or something in there, an element, a table or a graphic that would make a great graphic or topic for an online chat element, I put OC out in the margin, so I know that what I highlighted over there or circled or whatever, and my books are all marked up. I know that that's an online chat opportunity, so later on when I go back to build my 10 topics a week and my 16 to 20 online chat topic choices, but not necessarily covered, per chat session, I've already got a lot of my legwork done. I go through and I count them and I see how many I have for each chapter and how many I want for each chapter, and sometimes I have to go back and find more, or I have to go back and cull out because I've got too many, and I have to pick the best of those. And that hourly, that hour total, that's a real guess. A real guess. But it's pretty robust. The syllabus is 13 pages or something.
I'm curious about getting more feedback from students. I guess, not that I've been involved in this history, but I was curious because I've heard the percentage of feedback, because it's not a mandatory thing, you're not sitting in a face-to-face where no one can leave until their survey's filled out.
Right.
How do you, well, it sounds like you're getting your feedback because you're actually posting chat sessions.
That's correct.
What's done additionally at Drexel to get more feedback? Or is there one in place?
Well,
Students' feedback, because if disservice, as you mentioned, is even occurring, it's not going to be known.
the only fair answer is that it's programmatically excellent, good, fair, bad. I think some departments do a really good job of it, and others are, what I try to encourage faculty to do is right in the syllabus and right in the introduction of the course and right at the start of a term with your online students, make sure that they know that you want and will utilize their feedback. So much of what we do in online learning, I think, is how we set the tone. If they know that we're going to be a distant facilitator, that sets the tone. If they know that we're going to be right in there with them in the discussions and stuff, that sets a different tone. If you set the stage early that you genuinely want their input on an ongoing basis across the class, you could just write me a mail message. Maybe there's an anonymous topic each week that you put in there. Provide feedback to the facilitator, and oh, by the way, this is an anonymous topic. And when they see that their posting does not have their name next to it, like all of their other postings do, you'll get some feedback. Now, I do tell them at the end of this last chat session that I'm not going to question 2 until I get a response from everybody to question 1. In other words, we're not getting out of here until I've got responses from each person. I do that, but it's all over the map. I'm sorry, that there's just no other way to answer that.
There's no standard. That's your choice as an instructor.
Everything I've highlighted for you, yes, but I talk about this as passionately and as often as I can because I think there's some value here for certain programs, topics, and facilitators. There's another, yeah. I recognize you. What school are you from?
No, I've seen you at your events.
Oh, okay. Very good. Wants to remain anonymous.
No, because I'm not connected to it.
Fine.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming.
Curious about at Drexel, not just not just the classes that you teach,
Right.
Across the board at Drexel, how many other synchronous events are there typically in a course other than the chat? Are there lots of synchronous classrooms held, or is chat pretty much the only synchronous event that's in a course?
Are you talking about just inside the learning management system, a chat tool versus a Wimba classroom environment?
No, I mean, are there other events like classes that you have that are held synchronously in an online course? Or is everything pretty much categorically self-paced?
Oh, I'm sorry. I would say there's no way for me to know except to ask the administrators who know how to do these queries against the database, like how many people are using chat, how many people are using Google Classroom, for instance, that sort of thing. I would say that it's probably very small, the amount of, the number of sections that are actually using a synchronous element. Now, and it would be even smaller, obviously, where it's required, as opposed to just enabled. As Bobby advocated, to provide a space for the students to use, even if it's not required, so that they can go there and just utilize the tool. Just right off the top of my head, I would say that the number of sections that have live components of any type is probably less than 10%. But I think it's not a travesty, it's an opportunity missed, and that's my entire message. There's value in this, give it a try, see what you think, see what your students think, and either go forward or stop. But don't not try. That's really the core message. And I've tried to back it up with some insight from students, insight from faculty, insights from me, obviously, but also something from some recent literature. That's the address that's my faculty webpage, and you will actually see there a link to this entire presentation that you can watch. It's not done with voiceover, it's just all the slides. If you take the card and you send me an email, it's just mes27@drexel.edu. That's my username at the end with the tilde in front of it. I'll send you the PowerPoints, I'll send you my syllabus. I'll send you whatever you want. Or I'll have a dialogue with you. If you wanted to disagree with me, if I didn't want to do it in open forum, write me an email and disagree with me. It'll help me. That's what it's all about. That's why we're here. Right? Bobby and I have had many conversations. Rich and I have had many conversations. Georgette and I have had many conversations. And we're just a little bit passionate about it. So, for what it's worth, thanks.